What's up, everybody? Jensen Cummings here. Thank you, as always, for tuning in. Today is Best Served Podcast 235. We're talking Who Are the People Worth Saving with Chef Nina Compton. This is episode 3, part of Best Served Together, volume 1, where we're really focused on the Independent Restaurant Coalition, the work that's happening. This coalition came together at the onset of the pandemic and has really catapulted itself into the national spectrum, where now there are hundreds of regulators at the national level that are looking to push through the Restaurants Act. So we wanted to take some time over these 4 weeks in October to really dive into the people at leadership there, what's happening, and as always, with us, why and who. So today we're going to focus on who's worth saving, really the people in restaurants that are the lifeblood, some 11 to 15 million people that call this industry home, that are some of the best and craziest people you will ever meet. And we want to really acknowledge and celebrate them a little bit. So I want to bring Nina in to speak with us. Nina Compton, thank you so much for being on.
How are you?
I am doing very well. So, very quickly, for the 5-7 people in our industry who don't know who you are and the work that you do down in New Orleans, love to, 2017 Best New Chef, 2018 James Beard Award. These are things that very quickly put you in a category. Yet, I think for you and the work that you do, you are never defined by an award. You are really defined by the people that you surround yourself with. And so give people very quickly kind of what they can expect from you and your crew down there in New Orleans.
Well, New Orleans, as you know, is very food and music centric. I think that's the lifeline, and that's why I chose to relocate and make that my home now. New Orleans is, when people talk about food, it's not just at restaurants, it's about at people's homes. It's about tradition, it's about culture, it's about respect, and it's about preserving that. So that's something I really dived into when I moved into New Orleans. And I currently have two restaurants there. And, it was about, when I opened my restaurant, I didn't want to come in as the big shot, the new guy. Look at me. I kind of wanted to come on the radar and understand the traditions and the way people, treat food and understand it and be very respectful. So that was kind of my first introduction when I moved there, was kind of like understanding the culture, the way they cook, what they look for, the soulfulness. I really wanted to make sure I covered all those points when I opened my restaurant. So
yeah,
it's about, the team that you have people that it's such an interesting city where you have, one of my cooks, she's connected in the music, higher ups, if you will. Trombone Shorty is a cousin, and she's like, "Oh my God, Trombone is my cousin," and I'm like, "Oh my gosh," that's a really big deal. So when you talk about those things, it's about, the connections you have with people. It's not just about working those 8 or 10 or 12 hours and just worrying about food. It's about the connections you have with people, and it's really unique because they're like, "We're going to show you the real New Orleans chef. We're going to take you to this place."
Right.
So, it's not just about the work that you, the time you spend with them at work. It's about also understanding the city, and for you to really appreciate it. And they really want you to see that through their eyes as well.
I really love that, because what you're talking about now is culture. And the culture, it's interesting because you cannot separate the food from the culture in New Orleans. Maybe unlike anywhere else in this country, it is so systemic. It is so matter of fact the way that it is. And people have so much emotional and personal history connection to it. I think it's interesting, as to your point, a chef coming from outside, there's two sides of that coin there. One, there's so much buy-in to the culture there that people really appreciate food and your ability to tell a story through food. On the flip side, being new and coming, how do you make your stamp on a city that is so defined and established that sometimes New Orleans doesn't like new? It likes very old. And so it's an interesting dynamic, and I appreciate that you're being thoughtful about it. And your team, it seems like you're really leaning on your team for them to show you the real underbelly, to show you the connection of culture and food and music. And so that's smart. I really like that you're going to the people that have lived it their whole lives, as you being a newcomer and somebody who wants to obviously have influence on the future of that market, yet being respectful of the past. I really, really appreciate that. And so I want to stay kind of on that, the people and the work that's happening. You have a couple businesses and you have dozens of people that rely on you and your businesses for their well-being, for their financial, personal, sometimes their mental health well-being, all of these things. So let's go there. Why was it important for you to champion for them and for independent restaurants and get involved with the Independent Restaurant Coalition?
It's when you have a business, you're in a leadership role, whether you like it or not.
Right.
You can say, oh, I like to be on the line and cook with my staff, but you're a leader. When the pandemic hit, I would say maybe about a week and a half before it actually hit, I was watching the news, and I hate to watch the news because I think there's just never anything positive, and
Yeah.
it brings you down. But I had to watch it because this virus was so contagious, and I could see it coming from Asia to Europe, and then we had a couple of cases here in the US. And this was our very, very busy time. And at that time, I'm like, there's no way they're gonna shut down New Orleans. We just finished Mardi Gras, and like the city's buzzing. We have all these festivals coming up, all these conventions, and we saw reservations start to decline. We had all our buyouts, they canceled, and the staff were looking to me for answers, and I didn't have the answers. So for me to be in that position and always had the answer, like, okay, guys, we're gonna do, 200 covers. We're gonna sell a lot of snappers, so make sure you have all your snapper ready to go. Make sure I was able to navigate that, but to deal with this pandemic where we had no information and things were happening very quickly. It was literally on the hour. It was schools closed, space. We went from 100% to 25% occupancy in restaurants, and then it was like, now you have to space all your tables. And then the next day it was, we had a curfew, 9 o'clock, every restaurant had to be closed.
Yep.
Then the next day it was, no, it's no dine-in, it's takeout only. So I could not think fast enough to guide my team. And when we decided to close both the restaurants, that was a really hard time for me because I was powerless. And I cried. I could not even. I spoke to my management team. I told them first, and then we had a full staff meeting with everybody. I couldn't even speak. My husband, who's my business partner, had to tell everybody because I was just so choked up. Because when you have people that are relying on you, and I felt like I failed them.
Yeah.
So that was very, very hard for me to just let it happen. So when I got the invite to join the IRC, I said, okay, these are people that are fighting. These are, pioneers in the industry that are not going to let this fail. And I need to do something. I need to give my staff a voice, let people know that it's not just Nina Compton. This is Nina Compton plus, almost 100 people. So I just couldn't let that just let it be, because these are people that are committed to me. They're relying on me and they want to stand by my side. So that's why the IRC, we're pushing to get this done, not just to save my staff, but to save millions of people's jobs. And I think the biggest thing that when people talk about, there's just too many restaurants, to begin with. Okay, that's fine. But what people don't understand is that restaurants don't only directly hire people, they also indirectly. So you talk farmers, you talk about breweries, you talk about, my linen company that gives me napkins for my restaurant. When we reopened Bywater American Bistro, I'm like, okay, just deliver my usual amount on Wednesday. They're like, chef, we don't deliver 7 days a week. We deliver once a week, and it's on Monday, so you need to come and pick it up. And when you hear companies like that have to downsize so drastically, because restaurants are not open. And, people can say things like, oh, just put a couple of tables and chairs outside, you'll be fine.
Yeah, no.
Or it's summertime, or do takeout, you'll be fine. People order takeout. What does the linen company that sells napkins and tablecloths, what do they pivot to?
Right. Yes. I appreciate so much what you're saying right now. Back to the vulnerability that you felt, and I appreciate you sharing that, because I know that's not easy, especially as a chef. You are so the master of your universe, the ability to move so many pieces around. It's such a challenge. You're helpless, and it's not a position that chefs are accustomed to or comfortable with at all. So I really appreciate that.
We like to be in charge.
Yeah.
We like to be in charge. We like to call the shots. We are confident. We're able to guide these people, and they trust us. So when people say, "Hey, chef, what are we gonna do on Friday?" I'm like, I have no idea. What are we gonna do? So when you don't have the answers, it's very frustrating, and I think a lot of people, when the pandemic hit and most restaurants were closed, I think a lot of chefs and owners were blaming themselves.
Yeah.
They felt like we dropped the ball, we messed up, when we actually didn't. And that's something that we have to get past. And we have to, I think that the information in the beginning when the pandemic hit was not very clear to us, because nobody knew. This is something new to us. And I think a lot of us, including myself, I was very naive. I said, in a month, we'll be back on track.
Right.
This is America, first world country. We have all technology, you name it, we can do it. And I was convinced. I'm like, well, I'll just try and relax and take the time off. And I was, this is, back in March. I'm like, okay, well, if it gets pushed back to May, okay, that's summertime. I was like writing all these menus. I'm like, I'm going to get ahead of the curve. I'm going to get summer menus done. I'm going to have all the private events, have all that done, tweak all these things, Thanksgiving menus, New Year's Eve, Christmas. And, each day just got longer and more days and weeks. And now we are 7 months in.
Unbelievable. The time, it's like you're in this time warp. It seems like it's been forever. And then it seems like just yesterday they were talking about shutting down restaurants on whatever that March 13th, 14th, 15th, something like that, depending on where you were. So can really appreciate that. So I want to get into the specific work that the IRC is doing. And I really appreciate that you also mentioned that the work that a restaurant does is also a pass-through for so many other industries. So getting the Restaurants Act passed is not just $120 billion for restaurants. The amount of downstream economic impact that it has is massive, massive. And the numbers, number 2 or 3 employer, depending on whose numbers, number 2 or 3 economic driver, depending on whose numbers, right? These are massive, massive industry that has a huge impact. 600,000 plus restaurants, 90% of which are independently owned, 1-2 operation like yourself. And so really want to get into that. I want to make sure everybody right now, if you have not yet, you must not have been paying attention to our show, because we put the Save Restaurants hashtag up as much as we possibly can. SaveRestaurants.com is in the comments right now. Sophie is dropping it in there. Make sure that you go. It literally takes 20 seconds. They have it well automated. You go on there, depending on where you are, it'll automatically go to your local, state, and federal representatives, and they'll send you back a note saying we received your input. There's 15 million people that work in the industry, and there are tens of millions of additional people that the restaurant industry impacts. You have to go and do this. You have to make sure that you do it, your staff, whatever that is. So now, what's the day in and day out for you look like? What is being asked of you by the IRC? Give us a little bit of an idea of, for you as a kind of a leader in that group, what's actually happening? How are you using your voice? Are you speaking to representatives? What's the expectation placed on you?
So it's so beautifully, when you look at the organization as itself, I would say at least just under 100 members.
Okay.
And we have bi-weekly calls. So Mondays and Wednesdays, we have a call and it gives us the updates. And then we have people that are lobbyists that basically give us the insights of what's happening in Congress. Because I don't think if you ask any chef 6 months ago and I say, hey, do you know anything about Congress and lobbying and doing
No.
I don't know. So we had a lot of that basically broken down for us. So, and what they're doing when we have these calls is telling us, how do we position ourselves? How many signees do we need? Which areas in the country we need a little bit of a push. So that has been really helpful in giving us guidance, because again, we're chefs, we run businesses. So when it comes to that, it's really hard to know where to go and what direction. So having people on that team breaks everything down. We have such a great insight, and we're able to give the representatives that we call, give them an insight on a localized level. How do we need help? A lot of them are very aware of the struggles. And I think that sometimes when they hear those from the people that are on the ground every single day, it gives them more of a personalized connection. Getting an email or a letter, when you actually talking to somebody saying, hey, I have these people that have these exuberant amount of rent. People are talking about $70,000 of rent, and they're doing 10% of sales. I mean, how do you expect people to just walk away and just say, I'm done? Because again, with the industry, we're leaders. We are emotionally and financially invested in these businesses. So it's very hard just to walk away from that. And I think that's what's great about the IRC is we're all fighting for it. And we're giving the mom and pop shops, the other small restaurants that don't have the voice, we're giving them a voice.
Yes. Independent restaurants have never galvanized like this in any given community, let alone across regions and across this entire country. So from that perspective, now seeing the potential strength of that cumulative voice of, over 500,000 business operators plus tens of millions of people that work within that industry, there's a little bit of a reckoning. There's a reckoning happening within our industry there's a lot of vulnerabilities that we see. There's a lot of inequity that we see, and we're having to reflect on that and create a new opportunity for ourselves coming out of this. We're also seeing we have way more strength than we ever realized that we had before, because you're just getting your head kicked in. You're in the weeds, you're tunnel vision, trying to get that next plate up, trying to get that table turn, like these things that we focus on that in the moment are strengths, yet we don't sometimes have the vision because we're so in the weeds, right? And so I appreciate that pointing that out. I want to really hover on this for a moment. I want to tell people restaurants are, we say this every show, I think, fundamentally the pillars of both culture and commerce in your community. And every other industry is recognizing we need restaurants so desperately for us to survive and thrive. And now restaurants need to recognize that things like paying your people an unlivable wage, it just can't be the industry norm anymore. This industry standard of 5, 6, 7% net profit cannot be the industry standard. We need to look to all of our partners that are part of our ecosystem to invest in restaurants, because if restaurants survive and thrive, your community does. Full stop, the end. Restaurants are fundamental, and we're recognizing that now and using our voices. So I really, really appreciate that. Thinking on that, and you mentioned, again, the people that we are of service to, the people that work within the restaurants. I want you to speak to them for a moment. They are freaking out. A lot of people leaving the industry because they're scared that they don't have jobs, that they won't have jobs, that this industry will not exist, and are scared. I want to speak to them, and then I also want to speak to kind of the business community at large and what we need to do to help them. But let's start with your people again. What do they need to know? What reassurances or realities do we need to lay out for them at this moment?
I think that this industry, from the beginning of the pandemic, was put, on the front lines. When you look at the news, they say, don't go to restaurants. Restaurants are dangerous. You can get COVID. So it's like, that was one thing. And, a lot of people got flagged for actually staying open during the pandemic because they're like, oh, it's so unsafe. How can you stay open? Most restaurants are not trying to make people sick. They're just trying to get by. And when the government was not giving us any aid for months and we didn't get any rent abatements, there were no breaks. We got nothing, absolutely nothing. It was just basically make it happen. So a lot of people were pivoting. I mean, we did takeout, we did meal kits, we did pantry boxes. We try to help the farmers out. We were doing produce bags once a week. And, you pivot, and it was very inconsistent. So some days things work, some days things didn't work. And at a time like this where every single cent that comes in, you have to hold on to that. It's costly. So I think that the message to people in the industry right now is that, yes, this is a very, very tough time. And a lot of people have made decisions to leave because they don't have a choice. And I completely, there is no judgment because I don't know 6 months from now how many restaurants are going to be open. I really don't know. So I think that not just restaurants, but the job market as a whole has shrunken. I think that we have, over the years, I think that we have created so many platforms and so many jobs that it was endless. You could find a job anywhere. And now every industry is downsizing. Every industry. Because people are not traveling. That affects everything. That affects hotel rooms. That affects, I went to, I'm actually in Portland now. I went to New Orleans airport and I went to buy something at this little store in the airport. And it says credit cards only, no cash, because we don't have any coins to give change. Because there isn't enough money circulating as cash because there's so many places that are closed. So you see a lot of those things happening. And it is very daunting to be in this industry where you're like, is it worth it to stay? But it's also daunting on the other side because where else can you go? Because there's no other job market that's actually being created right now as a fallback. But I think restaurants need to survive. And this is why I say this. Most people, when they go to college or as their first job, is in a restaurant. A prep cook, a dishwasher, a hostess, a food runner, a bartender. People pay college through that. They wait tables. They make money. So if you have that gone, high school jobs, when you have summer break, you pick up a job there. So restaurants are actually the first introduction to work, to a job. So if that is gone, then where do you start? I just think that it's something that is so approachable because most people go to restaurants. So it just seems a very common thing to say, hey, I can work at a restaurant, and you find a sense of community in the restaurant because it is a very intense work environment. But I think the closest you have with people when you work in a restaurant, it's not like an office.
No.
When you work in a restaurant, it's like, it's a team building effort. I mean, when I was a young cook, we would always go after work and have a drink and talk about the day, which every cook does.
Everyone.
And it's a sense of community. It's that's your team. It's like a ride or die mentality. And I don't think any other industry has that. So when you take that away, you kind of lose that.
We could talk for hours and hours about this. It's just so refreshing to hear in this moment that you still stay tethered to the relationships that we build in this industry. It's what truly matters. It's who truly matters. That's what we're trying to save here. It's not the four walls. It's not the table. It's not the art on the walls. It's none of that. It's these people that have put their faith in this crazy ass industry, you know, and they found their tribe. You know, we call them unsung hospitality heroes for a reason. Like, they are truly essential worker. Please, that does not even begin to describe who we are, who the people are that you are so lucky to work with. And I really, really appreciate that we're pointing that out. And I want to take the last moment to let people know that saving restaurants is absolutely not just about saving this business. It is about creating the opportunity for the livelihood for people that they matter. They are your sons and daughters, your neighbors, your significant others. Like, they are absolutely the people that make up the fabric of your community. They are some of the best people that are completely on their ass right now, so many of them. Yet in the next breath, they say, where can I volunteer my time? These are the people that matter. And that's what we're trying to save here in restaurants. Is saving the business is an extension of the ability to create an opportunity for millions of people. And I think that's what I want to make sure of. And so you have to recognize that saving restaurants is a moral and economic obligation that we all have. And I really, really want to see people take this seriously, because every other industry that connects to this is so vulnerable in this moment that restaurants, the second that you give restaurants a little bit of lifeblood, they're going to bring farmers into that ecosystem. They're going to bring the linen company into that ecosystem. Like, all of those things, restaurants take other industries and amplify their ability to make money, to generate commerce. And I think that's an important thing for us to recognize. And here's the thing. We have bailed out so many damn industries, 25 companies. But the thing is, they're large companies, Nina, right? Like, bailing out banks or car industry or the airlines is because there's a bunch of big companies that have major influence. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of small companies. So it's easy to push them aside. No longer. The IRC is out there hustling to make sure that people pay attention to restaurants and independently owned restaurants, because they fucking matter. And people need to pay attention and slow down for a second and support restaurants. Nina, last thoughts. Thanks for letting me go on a rant there. I appreciate that. Last thoughts. Take us out here.
I think the last thought should be, support whatever restaurants in your neighborhood that are open.
Yes.
More than anything, it's not about the fast food chains, McDonald's, and they'll be fine. But it's about the mom and pop, fried chicken joint down the street that's cooking soul food. Support them, because they're trying to just keep it together and, give back to the community in the best way they can. And that's who really needs the help, is the small neighborhood spots that are just trying to get by. And, the government needs to help us out. We need to get this Restaurants Act passed very soon. Otherwise, everybody's going to be cooking at home.
Yeah, it could not be more true. You have to know that if this Restaurants Act does not pass, you can look at 5 restaurants down the street from your home, and 4 or 5 of those will not be open past the winter. I need to make it that real and dire for people. They will not be open. We cannot take that for granted. This is a reality that we need to pay attention to. So, Nina Compton, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to talk with you. Big fan of all of your work. Even more so, I didn't think I could respect you more than what you do on the plate and what you've done as a storyteller for the hospitality industry, the leadership you're showing in this moment, and the vulnerability you're sharing with the way that you communicate with your people. This is what's worth saving, and I really appreciate you sharing that.
Thank you.
All right, Nina, have a great day. We're going to let you go. Take care.
Have a good one. Bye.
All right, everybody. Nina Compton, the one and only, really appreciate the work that she's always done as a storyteller and communicator within this industry, even more so now, because the message of what it's going to take for the humans in hospitality to survive and thrive is part of the work that the IRC is so fundamentally focused on. We need to support that. I don't ask much of all of you very often. I just bring the best stories. Mostly I say, introduce me to new people. Yet get your ass up right now, get on your phone, your laptop, your tablet, and go to saverestaurants.com. Ultimatum. Stop watching this show if you're not willing to go and do that. We have got to take the very little bit of time that it takes, literally 20 seconds, to go on. You go onto the website, it pops up a field automatically. It takes down your name and email and where you're located, and it instantly pushes that to your representatives. That is the least that you could do. If you are a restaurant operator and you have not taken pre-shift to do this with your staff, you need to. If you are somebody who is in the industry and out of work right now, out of the industry, whatever, you want to get back into this industry, take that moment. If you are somebody who has eaten in a restaurant ever, which is all of ever, you need to go and make sure that your representatives know that this matters. Nina mentioned there's little gaps across the country where people aren't paying attention to this. Make sure, share this with your cousin who is in some part of the country that may not be paying attention to this. You have an opportunity now to use your voice. Do not waste this opportunity. Thank you for letting me rant on that. I appreciate that. A couple big rants in here. This is serious to me. I take this very seriously, and it's why we wanted to focus on this. So again, Best Served Podcast 235. The people worth saving. There are millions of people worth saving. We have to put whatever little effort that we can so that the IRC is empowered and other groups are empowered to be able to put some weight on your representatives to make this happen. $120 billion is nothing. It's a drop in the bucket for the amount of money that it's going to take. If restaurants fail, just the cost of unemployment is what, 260 billion, let alone the economic impact and loss of driver, the number 2 or 3 employer, number 2 or 3 driver of economic impact. That's it. Go do it, please. I implore you. That's it for today. Go back, episode 227, episode 228. Shanita Bryant and Andrew Zimmern speak on this topic as well. The next week, we're going to have Bobby Stuckey on. So this same bat time, same bat channel, 2 p.m. Eastern, noon Mountain, 11 Pacific. We'll be on Tuesdays with the IRC focused Best Served Together Volume 1 series. Bobby Stuckey, Caroline Glover coming up. And we'll probably keep this going because it does not look like they're passing this soon enough. So we probably go into November. All right, that's it. I'm rambling on. Appreciate you as always for tuning in. Cheers.